The suicide monk out here in the forest, as you can see, down by the river, so that's the background noise. I just wanted to do a quick introduction of my next guest, and his name is Andy Campbell. He is a man that has gone through many adversities, and one as a parent that we never want to experience. This is a very, very good conversation, educational in a way that, especially if you're a parent and you have a child that is struggling and suffering, these are people that walked with their son from a very young age all the way. And it's a difficult conversation. It's beautiful. It's sorrowful. It's heart-wrenching in and of itself. But it gives a lot of great information, a lot of great wisdom. So please enjoy. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you on the good side. Peace. Well, welcome to the Suicide Monk, and my name is Britton, and today we have Andy Campbell. Andy, I've read over your bio, and I'm not going to do any injustice to introducing you. I know you have a book, and that's Overcoming Life's Setbacks. Can you tell me a little bit about that before we dive into your story? Or is that part of this core belief system that you kind of came up with? Is that part of that book? Is that where that comes from? So let me do this. You've been a victim of sexual abuse as a child, lost your mom at a young age. How old were you when you lost your mom?
She was first diagnosed when I was 11, and we watched her die over the next 11 years. So I lost her when I was 22.
Cancer?
Cancer, breast cancer. Her and three of her sisters all died in their late 40s, early 50s from breast cancer.
Oh, sorry to hear that, man.
But I think the impact was really just beginning at 11 years of age, watching your mother struggle and through three different bouts with it until it finally took her life.
Yeah. I understand that to some degree. My pseudo mom, when I was a kid, was diabetic, and at the time in the 70s, they didn't.
Yeah.
You can't understand as a child why, mom can't get off the couch, and she's sick a lot, and then all of a sudden she's gone. And so
it's impactful for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And then you had stage 4 pancreatic cancer.
I was 53. It's funny, my mother died at 53, so I was convinced. I'd become convinced that I would not live past 53. That something would happen. I would die before the end of my 53rd year. And just after I turned 53 in July, in August, I was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer, which they caught almost by mistake. They thought I had like gallstones or a gallbladder problem. And so they sent me in for an ultrasound. And the ultrasound showed lesions on my liver. And so the doctor called, and I told him, I said, well, at least it's not pancreatic cancer. Like, it's bad, but it's not pancreatic cancer. Yeah. So then a couple of days later, they did the MRI, and I'll be damned, it turned out to be pancreatic cancer, and it was stage 4.
Wow. That's something else.
Yeah.
Then you've had a major tragedy in your life.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that I can get it out.
Yeah. My 18-year-old, who informed us when he was 9 years old, and he had no access to internet. He didn't know anyone in the family who had committed suicide. We're unaware of anyone that he knew through school or friends. But at 9 years of age, he told us he wanted to, or he had decided that he was going to kill himself. And we spent the next 9 years doing everything in our power to convince him that suicide was not the answer. But eventually, you won't be there. We wouldn't be there. And so there was a point at which he had to stand on his own and make his own decision. Mm-hmm. And I think the lure of ending the pain that he was in, the mental pain that he was in, was seductive enough that one day he killed himself. and I found his body the next morning.
Man, I'm so sorry, man.
Yeah, it's. I cannot think of an enemy that I have ever known, read about, or heard about that I would wish it upon.
Yeah.
Yeah, can't can't imagine. It's just it's. I think if he, I always told him it was the one irreversible act. Everything else could pretty much be dealt with, but it was the one irreversible act. And I think if he could reverse it, he was a highly intelligent, high IQ, languages, Romance languages. He could speak Latin. He could write Latin. Um, he was kind of a language philosopher, like he was into philosophy. If there was, if there was one thing I would do different is I would have found a way to prevent him from being in the mindset that he was in and reading Nietzsche. I would prevent that.
Yeah. It's a tough thing because we're attracted to that darkness. We know the dance.
Yeah.
We know it well.
Yeah.
And to see light in that is very, very difficult. It's actually almost impossible.
Yeah. I agree. If there was one thing I would, I don't know how it could be communicated because and when I say I know, I don't mean that I know, but I have observed that when my son or others are in that situation, like you said, light is almost like a cross to a vampire. Like it's just like I'm not paying attention to that. That's a lie. He would tell me that's not true. That's a lie.
Yeah.
What I hold to be truths, right? That the sky is blue, and that there is happiness in the world, and that life is worth living. But if there's one thing that I would hope that some way, someone who is having suicidal ideations or they're on the verge of committing that act, if they could grasp that the pain they feel will not go away when they go away. The pain they feel will remain, and it will grow, and it will spread to everyone that loves them, everyone that knew them, and everyone who will ever hear the stories about them. And that pain will consist over a number of years, right? Generations, really. And and that if they could stay and work to lessen the pain, if they put their energy into lessening the pain, whatever small amount of energy they could muster, as opposed to ending their life, it would be far better for the universe, because they are an intricate part of the universe. They are a thread. When they commit that act, the universe is in some way torn. It's ripped. And if they could stay and lessen the pain, then the pain would not get transferred generationally, and their story of surviving would be what would be transferred generationally. It would be an inspiration to people 2 generations down the road that they did not give in. I don't know how to communicate that message, and I don't know if anyone would ever believe it when they're in that space. But if just one person would believe it, then it's worth talking about.
Yeah. Well, up until recently, I felt pretty strongly that taking your own life, having that choice, was one of the most altruistic things you have. And now that I've come to a different realization, I've found life in a different way. I've actually found life. Choosing life is actually the most altruistic thing you can do. And that's what, this is a short time that we live on this planet. It's 80 years roughly. It's a pinprick. And I understand torment. I've understood it for 44 plus years. and that is the goal. The stigma, we can save lives if we can show up. And even though you did what you could, it's a darkness that is relentless in its pursuit, and it takes a mindset and somebody understanding. And that's a thing. Like, I don't want people to understand me. I really don't. If you understand this, you're in torment,
Yeah.
and that's an ugly place to be.
Right.
What we want is empathy, and just from your persona and personality, I'm sure you gave everything to that. And so I'm curious how, looking back, and this is the kind of the curse of being human, would you have done anything different? Would you have said anything different? Would you, do you, there's times like I feel like when I'm done, I've put all my effort in. But then if I get past that doneness, I realize I could have looked at it differently, went towards it differently. Does this make sense?
Yeah, I think it does. And after he took his life, that's like all you think about.
Mm.
What could I have done different that day? What could I have done different the day before? What could I have done different when he was 9? What could I have taken him to a different psychiatrist? The psychiatrist we took him to did not work when he threatened to harm himself a couple of times. The second I told him, if I thought he was going to harm himself, if he said he was going to harm himself, I would not allow that to happen. I would commit him to the psych ward at the medical university locally, and I didn't want to do that. So please don't try to harm yourself or convince me that you're going to. And he did, and I had to take him, and that was up until I found his body. That was the hardest day of my life. And so, like, there's a million things you can look at and say, could I have done it differently? I had a therapist afterwards, the one who initially walked me through the EMDR process, which led to opening up, this. It's like a web search. Once you start, it's like you go through, and you're like, oh wow, I'm all the way back to when I was 7. But I would tell her, and I would be upset, crying, and I would just be like, I should have done this. I could have done that. And she said, well, why do you only think that anything you would have done differently would have worked out for the best? Why do you think it would have made it better? And I said, well, she goes, no, you don't. The question is, you're only assuming that if you had done anything different, only the outcome you want would have occurred.
Right.
What if you had done something different and he killed himself sooner? What if you had not taken him to the hospital and he had actually harmed himself and done something in a way that he didn't die, he became a paraplegic? What if you had, there's an infinite number of things that could have happened if you had done something different. Do you believe that you did not put all of the effort and all of the love and all of the knowledge that you had at the time? Did you do that? And I said, yeah, I do. I left, kind of like the sports, cliche. I left nothing. I left it all on the field.
Right.
I took nothing with me. I left everything. His mother left everything on the field.
Yeah.
And she's like, then assume that was the best outcome you could ever get.
Yeah.
And you don't like the outcome? But look, he definitely had a mental illness. We actually, there was a time, my oldest son, when I called him, he was out of town traveling. And his first question was, did he take anybody else with him? And I said, no. And he said, then thank God for that. And so, and that I kind of went back to that there is always, it can always be worse. So no, I do go there, but I work to pull myself back from it as quickly as possible by remembering what she told me. You're only thinking about, if you had done something different, it would have worked out where he wouldn't have killed himself, and he would have been healed, and life would have been perfect, right? It's like,
right.
So I question things but I have worked to not look at any one thing and think I should have done that.
Yeah. That's,
I,
I
it
mean, that's
just
good. It,
it unravels too much.
it does. And that is kind of one of the consequences or ripple effects of taking your life. The people who survive feel that, and that reverberation in a different way. And that darkness kind of bleeds into them.
Oh,
That,
I think that darkness, it expands.
mm-hmm,
I mean, I've heard, I can't remember the statistic, but it's a large percentage of, family members or friends, who, when someone takes their own life, that they then take their own life. Like, there's this percentage increase in people
mm-hmm,
associated with a
yeah,
person who commits suicide that then commit suicide. And it's almost as if that door has been opened as a reasonable or a potential avenue.
yeah,
And so, yeah, I think that darkness kind of starts to, and it's like water. It will always find a way,
mm-hmm,
it will always find a way to seep in. When I was initially, there was, I don't know, I was a few months into my cancer treatment, and something happened. Wasn't going well. I don't remember exactly the circumstances, but, um, you know, I just decided what's it all worth? I'll just end it today. I'm worth more dead than alive. I'm going to be a burden on my family. At least they'll get the insurance money. I won't have to suffer a painful death from pancreatic cancer. I had the gun, it was nearby. I didn't have it in my hand. For me though, that was not, and this is why I say, like, we have to think about what we're passing generationally. For me, the generations before me had suffered in different ways, some of them mentally and physically, and just the hard life that they lived. And in that moment, I thought about, how did they go through all that and they didn't kill themselves?
right,
My mother suffered with cancer for 11 years and died a
yeah,
very painful death, but she was just stubborn and persistent, and
yeah,
believed that life was worth fighting for. Her belief was that God will take you when it's time, and until then, it's your job to stay in the fight. And she did. And so, in that moment, my grandfather, my father, other people it kind of felt like they were around me, just saying, "This is not the way we do things," and it kind of pulled me back. I wasn't as far as my wife after my son died. I think she was just about to become that statistic of
mm-hmm,
people who kill themselves after someone close to them kills themselves,
yeah.
right? And um,
A
she was
mother's
struggling.
sorrow.
Oh, it's not, like a father, like, and I told her at the time, I'm like, a father, that's one thing. A mother, that's
Yeah, a
not
mother's
even in the
sorrow.
same universe.
Yeah,
She's carried that child. It was her youngest child, as everyone else was kind of there. She was able to spend more time with him. They had more memories together. He had promised her that he would never kill him, that he would not kill himself, because, he made him promise that if he was ever going to do that, that he would absolutely come to her and give her a chance to work through it with him. And he didn't. And,
it's hard.
that pain and anger
It's
was
hard, man.
just brutal.
Yeah,
And there was a day I called her. She had gone somewhere, and I just had this terrible feeling, and I called her, and she was on the verge, and we had a great physician. I asked her if she would please call him. We had his cell phone number. She's like, he's at work. He won't care. She did decide to call him, and he said, come to the office immediately. I've lost one. I'm not going to lose another one. And he helped her, but she wanted to be helped. So
hmm,
at least we didn't lose two.
hmm.
At least we didn't lose two.
Wow, man. It it hits home for me in that regard as well, because when I was 10, my mom attempted, and she was dead for 17 minutes. And
Wow. Wow.
they brought her back. I thought I was like losing my mind. I'm like 17 minutes, and she came back with no brain damage. I mean,
Wow.
it must have already been the damage must have already been, there. And I don't mean that in a malicious way, but
Right. No, I know what you
like,
mean. Yeah.
like it, whatever part of the brain it was supposed to affect is already affected. And I don't know if that's because, I mean, but the bipolar and all
Yeah.
the bad behaviors just got worse. But as a child, I was like, so that's the answer to difficulty.
Yeah.
And when I woke up at that age from a childhood of darkness, I was shattered, and that seemed viable. And then by 12, I was experimenting,
Yeah.
and honestly, my friend, there's not much anybody can do
Yeah.
unless we're present.
Yeah.
And that's these times alone that we spend with ourselves are hard. They're so tormental that hell looks more appealing than life. And
Yeah.
that's the problem.
I am aware enough to know that I am unaware of that depth of despair, that depth of hopelessness. I saw it on the face. When I found my son, he had fallen forward, he shot himself. And he had fallen forward and his head was turned toward the door. When I opened the door, I didn't see him. So I was I was terrified when I opened that door. And I looked around and I saw nothing. And then I looked over and I saw him. And the thing that sticks in my mind, and it was a good thing that he was facing me because that was the side that was intact. He was the most peaceful that I had ever seen him. The most peaceful I had ever seen him. And but our torment had just begun.
Yeah.
What we thought was, and I don't mean to use the same word as if
No.
it's the same. I don't mean
No.
to draw a parallel to it, but it's just that pain. Because then you think, that's what his life could have been. It could have been that face during life.
Yeah.
It's yeah.
Yeah.
I can't imagine it. I feel so terrible for people who are in that place, and having been through it for 9 years with my son, there's a part of me that thinks maybe it's not even worth trying, because once they're in that place, it's so hard to come back from. My wife described it as a tunnel that she went into, and she had been close to the tunnel, but that day she started to walk into the tunnel, and that it was seductive.
Yeah.
Like you said, she'd rather be in hell than in that place where she was. I just wish there was a way that, and it's not really, I don't know, putting other people in front of yourself, because maybe people think at the time that's what they've been doing and that's what they want to get away from. But I don't know, the pain doesn't go. That's all I would say. The pain doesn't go away when somebody ends their life. It
No.
stays.
And I will tell you this: you're looking at a man on the other side. I leaned over the edge.
Yeah.
I mean, I leaned over that edge, and I did a psilocybin treatment.
Yeah.
And I was 99% sure that it wouldn't work, because I had no reference point to go back to, that anything was good.
Yeah.
And I was 99% sure within 2 days I was going to die and take my life. And I was in the part of the country where I intended to take my life, where my plan was supposed to take place. The 2 days came up and I was like, okay. And then something switched. Everything flipped. I got a phone call and my psyche just went pink. And I go through hard times right now,
Mm-hmm.
but I know how to navigate now.
That's amazing. Thank God, man. Thank God.
Yeah.
Because in that moment, you changed generations.
Yeah.
In that
I
moment,
mean,
you did that whatever caused that decision,
yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
you changed the universe.
Well, I think so too. And I think, you know, um, I hope this is okay. If not, I'll ask him. But my son's had some struggles
Mm-hmm.
and some major struggles. And
Take your time, man. We're in no rush.
he is actively working to get better now.
Yeah.
And, you know, he's in the beginning stages of really starting to understand and learn how to respect himself through a lot of torment and a lot of things that are against him in his mind. And so it is possible. It's just difficult. It's so difficult. And
But man, I would encourage you to think you are literally what I am working to communicate as the father of someone who took their life.
yeah, and this is what I'm trying to build.
I assume that maybe I shouldn't, but I'll ask: was your son alive when you looked over the edge?
Oh yeah, yeah,
So he's working on it because you didn't.
right.
So that has
Yes,
changed generations
my
because you made that one
yep,
decision.
yep. I think my friend's a nurse, but she's also like a very intelligent,
Yeah.
super intelligent naturopath, and um, I had some pituitary tumors that they don't
Hmm.
generally check for, but she has a machine. It takes my DNA, does all the
Yeah.
workup, blah, blah, blah. And I can't remember where I was going with that. I'm sorry. Um, that's what I was. So I was throwing up about 6 days a week, and this was prior
Wow.
to me taking my life and
Yeah.
projectile, like it came out of
Yeah.
nowhere.
Wow.
Um, and I've been doing this for 6 months. I mean, it's crazy. I get food down, I feel okay, and then boom, gone. And
Wow.
I lost a bunch of
Wow.
weight. So she's like, "Give me your DNA." Tested it, did this. She's like, "I can do sound therapy on it. We can fix this. As you know, this is probably what's going on." And I gave her the DNA, and I called her a month later. I'm like, "Hey, are you ever going to do that sound frequency?" She goes, "I already did." And I started thinking, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I haven't thrown up for 4 weeks."
Wow.
Like it was just a normal part of my day that it just
Yeah.
didn't even.
Yeah.
It became so normal that I didn't even realize that it was gone. And when
So is it
and
like a Rife machine kind of sound
I,
frequency kind of
you
thing?
know, I'm not. I have no idea. She's like, did she tested it, matched my DNA to a sound frequency, and
That's
then did that.
amazing.
But the point is that we have the ability to heal our lineage and those traumas by healing ourselves. And
Yes.
I think that's what, and I almost feel it in the depths of who I am, is that it's not just a line being cut, it's a line being repaired.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
it's, and yeah, I had to be, maybe I had to be the one to live this tormentual life to get there, but now it can heal itself in a way as we go forward, and it may not fully be me, but as my kids grow and they start to feel those effects and they learn their lessons and it starts to profoundly affect them, they'll move forward in a healthy way at a quicker rate.
Yeah.
And then
Well,
their
I mean, it's
kids, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, go finish. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just saying that, and then that just goes down the line with their
Yeah.
kids, and so it's
Yeah.
really a repairing of the past as well, not just
Oh,
mine.
yeah.
Yeah.
It is, right? And that decision that you made, whatever that phone call was, whatever happened in that moment, that change, you know, I don't know that you were destined for a tormented life, but you were the one in the lineage that had the courage to not move
Right.
forward, right? And that changes everything.
Yeah.
Sometimes, yeah, it's funny that you mentioned you look over the edge. I used to have, I would tell people at work, they would say we need to keep moving forward, and I would say, well, unless you're standing on the edge of a cliff,
Hmm.
like you don't want to move forward there. You want to back away from that.
Right.
And you were the one who backed away from it. And that changes everything. Do you think the psilocybin played into that? Was that a
It
bad
was
experience? Was
huge.
it
Yeah, it was huge. And
a
I'll tell
good
you what.
experience or a bad experience?
Oh no, it was. In spiritual terms, I met the devil and I met the creator. Like
Yeah.
in personal experience, what that did was tear down all the walls that I had built as a kid to protect me. And
Yeah.
those walls and those response systems didn't serve me as an adult. Actually, those response systems as an adult cost me everything. And, it cost me my kids not talking to me. So I don't get to see my grandkids. I don't, and I don't get to have that family aspect. It cost me my relationships and it's cost me my jobs and, everything. And
Yeah.
now that I'm on this side of it, and although it's extremely lonely, there's high potential for me to help people that really need it. And maybe I won't get my family back.
Yeah.
I did that. I can't, but I think going back to the DNA, what I'm doing bleeds into their DNA.
100. And what you didn't, and had you done what you didn't do,
Right.
that absolutely would have been there.
Yeah.
And it's not there. It's a thing that's not there.
Yeah.
And it's a devastating thing that's not there. And, you know, it's so I've done psilocybin, after my son died,
Yeah.
and I found it to be again, I'm not a doctor. I don't recommend it. So nobody go out and have a bad trip and then blame me for it. Okay. But um, it was, it was, it was instrumental in helping me kind of reset.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting you talk about breaking down the walls of the way the walls that you had built. I think if I'm quoting you right, basically the walls that you had built that had caused your response to events, things that happened or just the response to life that then caused, brought on other difficulties.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that it helped kind of clarify, hey,
Yeah.
what those were and that they weren't needed. They weren't helpful
Yeah.
now. And I think that's a similar outcome, through some of the types of therapy, the EMDR, some of those visualizations, hypnotherapy, acupuncture, all these things. And then the psilocybin, I think it was, it, it helped, it helped me see something similar to what you saw. Now, not in the same context, not
Right.
equating, right? I'm just saying that because of childhood sexual abuse and bullying, I was a much smaller, timid individual then. And so I was bullied a lot. And then, my mother died. I was estranged from my father. And then, the cancer and all those things at some point when the EMDR and the other things and that experience kind of kicked in, it was much more clear about the involvement that I had had. I wasn't responsible for many of the things that had happened to me. They were life. They happened. But I was once I became aware of them, responsible for not continuing to do
Right.
those responses, right?
Right.
So, yeah, I think I was just curious if that kind of preceded your
Yeah.
walking back from the edge.
Oh yeah. 100%. I can't tell you, and I think I could sit here and tell you that I had at least a dozen miracles
Yeah.
stand in my way from the time I was supposed to take my life at one point, and I made it to the psilocybin therapy ranch 3 months after my date, which
Yeah.
was I was like and I don't know how I made it there, to be honest
Yeah.
with you,
Yeah.
but I did, and I fought for my life. I mean, I just went. I was like, it's a Hail Mary. If anybody who's suicidal tells you that they just want to die, that's a lie.
Yeah.
If we had the choice of life or suicide, we would choose life every single time. Every single time. Even with difficulties. It's that we don't know how to navigate the difficulties that come
Yeah.
to our head
Yeah.
and those emotions that are overwhelming and that. And now I get to, do I still struggle sometimes? Absolutely. But nothing in that struggle comes without profound lessons that I can use for myself and others. And now my faith is at a point where it allows me to filter the things and the darkness that I always thought I was born into.
Yeah.
And, I thought I was cursed this way, and it's not a curse. It's our perception on reality. And, we can go outside and say it's sunny, or we can go outside and say it's cloudy, but as you can see, it's sunny.
Yeah.
And, what veil are we going to lift? And I can lift the dark veil. I could do it right now today. I know it. I know the dance. My problem is I don't want to live that life anymore.
Yeah.
I just don't. And I can't live that life anymore to be on this planet, period. I can't be any part of what I used to be. And that's not going to go away right away. I mean, psilocybin didn't fix me. It
Right.
just gave me the ability and the strength to keep moving forward, and what I like to call keep me in the fight and keep me fighting hard and for purpose. And honestly, Andy, the one big thing that it did was help me see the beautiful kid that I always was.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we often lose that because
Yeah. We
of
do.
the outward things that come into our lives, sexual abuse. And I
Yeah.
mean, I'm familiar with all this as well. So
Yeah.
I was sexually abused and physically abused, spiritually, all of it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, if you can name an abuse, I would probably have experienced it at some point in my life, other than probably trafficking. And,
Yeah.
and I can't think much beyond that I haven't endured, um, even in my adult life. Just the darkness follows, and it just picks at you any way it can. And it confirms all the things you think about yourself. You're not worthy. It's not,
Yes.
it's ugly. It's ugly and it's dark. And then you see the darkness in everybody else, and you're like, well, this is pointless because we can't see the light. We just
Yeah.
can't see the light.
See, the everything you just described, I have absolutely felt and thought about myself,
Mm-hmm.
except I looked back at, some people that came before me, and my my alternative was not to end it. My alternative was to live miserable and unhappy.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But the way you just described all those things, how it follows you, how it affects your self esteem, how it affects, it permeates every part of your
Yeah.
life. You see,
Yeah.
you lose trust in people, you're distrustful of everyone. Uh, you know, the anger, I don't know about you, but the anger that could
Oh,
show up that seems like, out of
it
nowhere.
took
And
everything.
yeah. And yeah, all of that. Um, it's just that my my outlet for that was just to live miserable,
Yeah.
not end it.
Right.
Right. But I
So
think at some point you still come to that decision point where you're like, well, and again, I'm not attempting to equate, okay, like where you were at and what I'm talking about. But at some point I came to a place where it's like, you got to make a decision. Are you
we,
going to, you're going to live
that's
like
a thing.
this, or are you
Like,
going to change?
yeah, then that's a thing. So, well, first, everybody's story matters. No matter what I realized through all of this is that we're all rowing different boats, and suicidals are all on the same island.
Yeah.
They all got their different ways. A boyfriend broke up, a girlfriend, a mom, a dad, whatever. Sexual. It could be one thing. It could be many. It could be something small. They're still on the same island.
Yeah.
And that means it matters because it
Yeah.
affected them in a way that it affects me.
Yeah.
And that torment comes to visit. And it's the same thing. And it beats us down all in all in the same way. It whispers those dark whispers and breathes on the back of our neck and puts us into this place of being subdued in that darkness and can't see the light. And man, stories matter. Everybody matters. And that darkness, that little bit of darkness can kind of snuff out the light that we have inside of ourselves because of all the external forces, confirming that.
Yeah. Literally snuff out the light.
Yeah. Yeah. I've looked for it in those dark. I'm like, where is it? And it's a dark, dark place. And I'm like, but I thought you had light in you, Britton. And I can't find it. And it's covered and it's subdued. And it takes, and that's why, there is nothing you could have done. But here's the thing that I am committed to, and that's being present as much as I possibly can. And I think that's what you were committed to. And that's what we were kind of talking about earlier is how do we bring this to the forefront where there's viable solution? Like the darkness is a very lonely place. So, and I believe, we can't always be in the presence of somebody, but if we can mitigate the time spent alone or that time spent in darkness long enough to help them realize how beautiful of a person they really are. Because that's really, we get these little notions, and I don't know where it comes from with kids. I know where it came from for me, but I do know that there are kids that have really good upbringings, really good families, and they are suicidal at a very young age. And it doesn't make sense. And you don't know.
Didn't make sense to our son. He was 9 years old. Right.
Yeah. Right. And, they got the family, got the brothers, got the sisters, got everybody's in kind of unison, not everything's perfect, but it's not supposed to be. And yet something's gotten a hold of them in their spirit or in their mind, or however you want to put that. Educating people to learn to walk with people like me will do a world of difference, because the language we use, you're a coward, you're a quitter, these things don't help. These reminders don't. They just confirm what we already feel about ourselves. And this is, I've told this, and I think you're a good example of this. And if we were to go back, I think this is what I would see, is that you love them, period. You want to help them, but you can't change the darkness. You can only lead them towards the light.
Yeah.
And that's what I found even in this. And, I had a friend, I started this because I had a friend who wanted to take her life, severe side of it. And I was like, I'm going to go raise some money, start a podcast, be the drunken high Joe Rogan of suicide and raise a bit of money and get her some therapy before I go take my life.
Yeah.
She didn't want the therapy. She didn't want the money. And I can walk as far as I can walk, but they have to get up and they have to walk towards it too. And that's the hard part. And now everybody I work with, I'm like, you work with me, we're going to work, and you're going to get up, and I'll hold your hand and I'll help you up, but you can't crawl on my back.
Yeah.
And I'm a hard ass, and I know what it is to be in the darkness, and I know all the excuses, and I'm living proof that we can do it, period. Like, you can't BS me in this anymore. And I think that's the value of this. I think that's the value of the darkness that I went through, is that I can pull people out now and show them that it's possible to love yourself. It's possible to see yourself differently. You're not all darkness. And these things that you react to, my rage towards everything, is just an outward reaction to the things that happened to me when I was a boy.
Yeah.
That's not everybody's case, but their rage is a protective measure of some sort, right? And it's an outward reaction to protecting themselves. So there's things that are so profound in my story that I now get to look at differently and walk in differently. And that is huge, because we haven't had this we get this on a very small individual basis, and now we've
Right.
got a platform to say this is possible. There is hope. You can
Yeah,
do this.
you can. I think the way you described it is also important. Uh, the individual, no matter how many times we told Heston that he was valuable, that he was going to be a contributor to the world, that he was courageous for having not, he didn't see it as courage. He actually saw it as
Right.
weakness for not
Yeah.
having, but we would say, you've made it this far, you're going to contribute, you're going to achieve beyond your dreams, stay.
Yeah.
The individual has to make that decision. You can't walk it. Actually, the day that he took his life that night, but that day his mother told me, and I don't think I grasped what she was saying at the time, but she was like, "Today is the day he decides to stand on his own. We've carried him for 9 years. We can't carry him past the day. He has to decide." And he did decide. It was just it was just a decision that I would have preferred he not make.
Right.
You know, I think going back to your earlier question, what what would be done differently? I think part of the allure of asking that question is that later you have insights that you didn't have then.
Right.
Right. So what would
Yeah.
you have done in those circumstances at that time differently? Well, I would have done nothing. I did everything that I could do at that time. I remember probably a year and a half after he died, I I don't even know how I found the book, but I read a book called Brain Energy by Dr. Mark Palmer, and he's. Are you familiar with it at all?
Is it neuroplasticity?
Well, it's he's like the chief of psychiatry. He has since become like the chief of psychiatry at, I can't remember the name of the hospital, but it's Harvard's Medical Center.
Okay.
And but his so what he still prescribes medications, right? I'm going to do a poor job of explaining it, but I would encourage anyone listening to to pick up the book and read it, because it gives one a different perspective of how mental illness or depression, I don't want to put a stigma on it, but depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, these things
Right.
play. And, his work suggests, and he has used this with his patients. And while he still uses medication with his patients, he has used this technique, which is basically diet. And what he says is that, and I'm going to paraphrase, so you probably won't read this in the book, but what I took away from it was kind of the way when a brain decides to go into a coma, it's going to shut down not unnecessary functions, but it's going to shut down everything except the most important functions.
Right.
And it just keeps shutting down functions to conserve energy and to preserve life as long as it possibly can. And he says that your brain requires, like, it's the largest consumer of glucose in your body, and that I think that's right, or it's one of the largest, because I think it's the largest consumer of glucose for energy. That
Probably.
Your brain takes a lot of energy to function, and that if it doesn't, for whatever reason, genetically, diet, whatever the cause of it is, if your brain is not, if those centers of your brain that need energy can't get enough energy, that your brain will start basically lowering the power to these other parts of your brain, and that the outward appearance of that is what we might call depression, what we might call anxiety, what we might call bipolar disorder or personality disorder.
Yeah.
He's like they've been able to study and see on images, like, where there's not enough energy in those parts of the brain, and that when they can correct that energy level, that then those functions come back up again. And now you still have to learn how to not deal, like we were talking about, how not to deal with situations the way one did before. And, because you built these habits and
Right.
you built this way of dealing in the world. But
Yeah.
so when I look back, I can't have implemented that with Heston, because I didn't have that information
Right.
then. The book hadn't been published. He hadn't published his work.
Yeah.
And it's not like an overly scientific book. It's written for people to look at and say, hey, there
Right.
might be, it might not work for everybody, but there are, you might want to try some of these things.
Yep.
That's one of the things that if I had known then what I know now, we would have maybe taken Heston to a place that focuses on that kind of stuff. Because I do think, early on I said I just have to come to terms with that Heston had a mental illness. And then after I read Brain Energy, I thought, well, maybe that's what we call it, but maybe it was just there was a reason why part of his brain just wasn't getting enough energy. So, his brain, the way it works is shut down and keep the most critical functions working, right? And then the next thing you know.
Yeah. I will tell you this, you explaining that, I'll tell you that's true.
Really?
There, once the psilocybin broke down the walls, I get up every day. I'm a 9 o'clock to noon sleeper.
Yeah.
I'm out of bed before the sun comes up.
Yeah.
I'm in bed by 9:30 now. And it's because I wake up with purpose, with intention, with I don't want to waste this beautiful day, with nothing, even in my frustration, I am not subdued. I'm like, even at the end of the day, I'm like, yeah, it was a messed up day, but look what you got done. I'm like, I know. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So this is a whole new life for me, to not have that darkness just overshadowing me all the time and always pulling away at my energy. So, and that's what I'm like, why I've been getting out of bed for almost a year with consistency, and I want to get up every single day.
You want to get up. That's the thing. Like, you want to get up, and
I want to go to bed. I can't wait till tomorrow. I get to do this, and that. I get to do what I'm actually supposed to do.
Yeah.
And function how I'm supposed to function. And I get to go load wood and smack my finger and cuss a little bit and be like, I'm all right. Let's keep going, instead of getting, blowing the whole world up and ruining the day and going back to bed. It's such a different concept. And it's not that I struggle immensely. I now get to step back, be an observer of those problems, and learn how to navigate my way through them.
Yeah. As you mentioned, it's an example to people. I'm always hesitant to put what has worked for me on what will work for other people, because sometimes I don't even know why it worked for me.
Right.
So I'm like, I don't know, maybe it's just an individual thing. It's some unique property. But I think what you're doing, and it's the reason why I ended up deciding to share these core beliefs that I had kind of accumulated over time, was I'm not, and I sense this about what you're saying, you're not telling people how to do it. You're encouraging them that there is a possibility that this could work for you. So let's keep going. Like you say, get up and let's do the work, because it's possible. You're an example that it's possible.
Yep.
And, I just think those things have helped me tremendously when I've been in difficult situations, when I've had those setbacks that might have broken me. It was kind of the idea that, but it is possible you might make it back.
Yeah.
It's not impossible.
Right.
It may not be probable right now. When I got diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer, I had a 3% chance to live 5 years. And that probably wouldn't be a great life, but I might live 5 years. So it wasn't highly probable, but there was a chance. There was a chance. And I think, the other people who had made it 5 years were the ones who kind of inspired me that, it's only, statistics are kind of funny. There's a 3% chance in the whole population that you'll make it 5 years. But individually it's 50-50.
Right.
Okay. I either
Yep.
will or I won't,
Yep.
And
Exactly.
so, it's like, so I mean, with like the work you're doing to tell people, they may look at it and say, I just don't think the probabilities are in my favor. I don't feel like it's probable. And, maybe they need to remember individually it's 50-50.
Yep.
Okay.
It
You
is.
absolutely have just as good a chance to make it as you don't.
Right.
Now let's put the work in.
Yep.
Right. I think that's a
And
great message.
when, I often tell people, I'm like, put a quarter of the energy into changing your life that you do subduing it.
Mm-hmm.
Because at some point we do have to make choices. And I had to make the hard choice to keep living. But if you choose to keep living, it will reward you. And that flower that you didn't think could blossom will start to break soil and turn into things that you never thought possible. And that's
So
the,
let me ask you do you mind if I ask you a
no,
question?
absolutely.
Yeah. So you said you had to make the hard decision to keep living. I came up with this. I wrote down this core belief when I decided that I would stop chemotherapy. And I knew that I was coming apart on the inside. I knew it was killing me faster than it was killing the cancer. And I had made enough, the chemotherapy had made enough progress in killing off the cancer that I now could probably, if I stopped chemotherapy, I could probably make it, 6 months feeling well, and then probably, these are my estimations, not
Right.
a
Right.
doctor, but in
Sure.
my mind, I thought, okay, I could make it 6 months pretty well. I think it's not down far enough where I could have a good 6 months. And then I would probably have a declining 6 months and die. So I figured, I get a year out of this, maybe 6 months. So it would be good if I quit now. And what I decided in that moment was, because I was going back and forth, like, yeah, but if you quit the chemotherapy, it could come back faster. If you quit, like if you don't quit, you feel like you're going to die from it. But if you do quit, you're going to die from it. And then what's
Right.
the consequences of that, right? Well, then I leave my children behind. I leave my wife behind. I don't get to see my dogs. I actually like my dogs. They give me happiness just watching them run around. Like that. Little things like that come to make me happy. Like
Yeah.
I'll just sit and watch them do nothing. And people are like, "Don't you want to go out?" And I'm like, "No, I'm watching my dogs right now." And they mean like you're sitting with like that. And I'm like, "No, I'm just observing them."
Yeah.
Like they're enjoying being alive. I'm just kind of feeding off of that right now. But like this thing I wrote down was, there are no hard decisions.
Yeah. I
There
read
are
that.
only hard consequences.
Yeah.
And that what we do is we take the I realized that what I was doing was taking the consequences of stopping chemotherapy, and I was placing them on the decision, when really what it was all these consequences I did not want to face.
Right.
But in my heart, I knew, like, it had come to me, you need to stop. It's time to stop the chemotherapy. And what happened was, doctor ended up talking me into, I did a 10-day water only fast. He was trying to get me to 20, but at 10, I had to come out of it. But I did a 10-day fast, water only and black coffee, no calories at all for 10 days. And that reset my immune system, completely reset my immune system. And then I came out of it with some weird cravings, like I have to eat watermelon all the time. And before, yeah, it's weird. Like when I first came out of the craving, luckily it was like during the summer, and I would eat one watermelon a day. No, I
Oh
have no
my
idea why.
gosh.
It was like I was pregnant and had to have, like,
I was going to
ice
say
cream
it.
and jerky. It
We
was
have a
crazy.
miracle.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like yeah, but it was crazy. And before that, I hated dark chocolate. And to
Mm.
this day, I can't eat anything less than like 70% cocoa. Like it has to
Oh,
be like
wow.
really dark. It's just like, and those were the two things that came out of, like, taste wise. And the doctor's like, yeah, a lot of stuff's going to change, and it did. But he talked me into going back for one chemotherapy. There have been some studies done that if you did a 3 to 5 day water only fast before you did chemotherapy, the chemotherapy would have less side effects. And he said, just try one more. So I did a 5 day water only fast. And then on the fifth day, I went in for chemotherapy. I think by that time, like, I had become so allergic to the chemotherapy, it didn't
Right.
have the same effect. If I had it to do over again, I'd start do a 3-day water only fast every day before I did chemotherapy.
Mm.
But it didn't work then. But what came out of that decision that I knew I had to make, but I was avoiding because of the consequences, so I called it a hard decision, was that when I stopped the chemotherapy, my oldest daughter found the program at the University of Pennsylvania that initially told my wife no, I wasn't a good candidate for, but she kept calling and she got somebody who said, no, we don't know why we don't know why somebody told you that. He's a perfect candidate. We'd like you to come up next week. And I ended up in a trial. I went there and they're like, we know exactly where you're at. Like, for the first time, I wasn't special. Like, see, in my hometown, I was the anomaly. True, like I was unique. Okay. Somebody who had lived that long and had that kind of response. There wasn't a lot of people like me around. When I got to UPenn, there still wasn't a lot of people, but I wasn't the only one.
Right.
Like, I was in a place where they're like, no, we know what your condition is. We get it. This is what we do. But if I had not made that decision to stop chemotherapy, which was the right decision, but came with hard consequences, I would not have ended up eventually in the UPenn trial that I believe followed on from all these other things. And a year later, the disease was no longer visible. So my point in saying that is, I was wondering if you looked at it from that perspective, would you say that in that moment when you said you made the hard decision to stay alive, was it a decision that you knew you should make, but the consequences of staying alive were hard? Or was it really a really hard decision?
No, it's a good question. It was a hard decision because I was now no longer afraid to die. Yeah. And I just wanted the torment to stop. Yeah. So the difficulty of the decision, we often see this in people, period, is we don't change because of the unknown. And we don't move forward out of the hamster wheel that we're in, our job, our marriage, that maybe try to salvage it, but it's dysfunctional and just don't put any effort into it. It just goes round and round. And it's people choose not to change on a large scale. I would say the majority of people do not change because of fear of the unknown.
Right.
And it is true. Like, when you go to change and when you go to face yourself, you're gonna fight some big dragons.
Yeah.
And
you are.
But with each dragon that you fight, you become stronger and stronger. And that's what the fear is. They don't think they're strong. They don't know that they have that fortitude. They don't know that they have that kind of strength. So it's easier to dance with the devil that you're familiar with than it is to change to the divine that you have no clue about.
Right.
And because with change, if you go into intentionally change, unless you're going to intentionally be a hitman, then the intention of change will bring good things through suffering and hardship. And this is my kind of saying right now, is that, God paints the canvas or the imitation of life on the canvas of your suffering or something like that. It's on one of my shirts, but It's basically that suffering is the invitation to life. And if you can say, I'm done suffering, and that's really what it is. I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
And you're going to go back and forth, but you're going to still keep making progress. And even though you think you're making 2 steps back, it's actually a catalyst to help you move 10 steps forward. And that's what, if we can sit in our suffering long enough to realize that it's teaching us, then this suffering doesn't get to stay for very long. It has no sandbox to play in.
In that moment, and I appreciate you sharing this because, it helps me see, better understand where Heston was, right? Yeah. It's in that moment, was the hard consequence of staying alive was it the unknown of what would happen if you stayed alive, or was it the continuation of the torment if you stayed alive? Like, what was that consequence of not making that decision?
So the visual that I've always had is that I can't see the future. I can't see myself in any situation that looks good. So it looks very bleak. Like the other day I was struggling. I can look out ahead of myself and say, well, I've got no family, I've got no friends, I've got no place to stay, I've got no. And everything looks very mundane. And what that does is say, is it really worth it? What am I really fighting for?
Yes.
What's the
Yeah.
point? And here's the caveat. As I sat with that, because I knew I had to sit with it, because what had been brought to is the very root of why I was enraged my whole life. And it has nothing to do with being molested or beaten or anything like that. It has everything to do with abandonment. And it has everything to do with abandonment from what I feel like is my faith in my God. And from a boy to this point, I see a linear line of abandonment.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's
I can identify with that.
Yeah, and I'm like, so it brings me, and I feel the devil whispering I'm breathing on my neck, and I'm like, this time it pissed me off though. He tried to lure me in, and I was like, I'm gonna show up. You just made me mad.
Yeah.
I'm gonna create, and I'm gonna take life from you because you've taken enough from us. And that little dance I did with him it spun me off the wheel, made me realize why I'm angry at the very thing that I got to my core finally.
Yeah.
And now I get to move forward in a profound way, to take life and make it something beautiful for not just myself, but for other people. And learning how to walk with us is very, very valuable. And it doesn't take much. One of the things I realized that, and this is probably not the case for your son, I never felt loved. Never.
Oddly enough, I think he didn't feel loved in his, which was always a struggle for us.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think the way he saw the world, his experience, his being in it, he did not consider the way we would show, and I think the way a parent would show love to a child, right? Like we work to emulate the way we think God or Christ would show his children love, right? So and I don't mean like we didn't force religion upon them. We didn't do those things. We didn't, it wasn't that kind of household, but we looked to establish his value. We looked to establish that he was cared for, to meet his needs, whatever those needs were. But for whatever reason, he didn't see that as love. So I think he did, in a way that I cannot fully understand, he did not feel loved. And he told me that he felt that he was unable to feel love. And I don't
didn't understand it.
Yeah.
And I would, my guess, listen to you because it's very similar. We don't understand love. To a degree, and it changes for everybody because our situations are different. But I would tell you that I'm alone right now. But if I step back, I can look at my friends and say, "Oh, I've got people that actually care and love me."
Yeah.
What I realized is it's not the kind of love that I require or want,
right,
or maybe even need. I don't know what the proper term is, and because it's new, it's like I've never felt that. And going into this podcast and doing what I'm doing now I've kind of got an umbrella of this whole thing. I don't want to do it without my faith and without my filter, my God, my creator, because of the place I'm in, because of the darkness I know that is ahead of me and the people I walk with, I have to be a light, and I can't do that alone. And that's my struggle, is I'm angry at the very thing that I need. So what do I do?
So you're angry at the love. You're angry at God, or at the abandonment of God.
Yeah.
My wife dealt with that and she was angry at Heston, but also, yeah.
It's hard when but there's so much here, man. There's so much on this forefront. We just don't know how this feels. for
Yeah.
somebody in this. And
Are you getting there? Like even in
oh,
your, well, not just your personal, but even with your creator, are you
oh
getting
yeah,
to the place where
yeah.
you've had, and has that been your change in perspective of what love feels like? Or has it been that like God and your friends have met you where you are?
It it's a I see. This is where the intelligence gets in the way, because I can create a narrative to justify my thought process.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to my pastor and I was like, hey, I'm going to take my life. I just want to tell you, you've been my friend, pastor, and mentor for 30 years. He's like, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to tell you. I don't, like, I'm dumbfounded. He's like, the only thing I know to say to you, Britton, is that I'll walk with you. And I think that is the level of love that is what I can't change you, Britton, but I'll walk with you.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna take in your presence. I'm gonna pray for you. I'm gonna lift you up. I'm gonna check on you. I'm not gonna carry it because I know it's
Yeah.
your darkness.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna show you how to be loved. And that's, I didn't have many examples, but if I really look back, I have been loved in different ways throughout my life. It just wasn't that initial lack of bond or whatever I missed out on was the thing that I held on to that I didn't have.
Yeah.
So my perspective of God is changing drastically. Because as I look back and I lift the other side of that veil, everything that's ever happened to me needed to happen to me so I could be who I am right here, right now, today.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what I feel about it, but I can choose to say, I'm happy or I'm glad that all those things happened, or I can choose to get on that hamster wheel and lament all over all those things that have happened. I know what that creates. That creates anger,
Yeah.
frustration, rage, loss, destruction. I don't want to live that way anymore. So
Yeah.
I'm just changing my perspective, and I'm going against my ego and my perceived notions that I've learned throughout my life. So my resistance is that ego that I don't want to, that's not true. My intelligence get in the way. That's not true. Look at this. Look at all this stuff that is true. And, again, that story just can build one way or the other. And how I build that story is up to me. And the language I use behind that story is up to me.
Yeah. That's very insightful. It's very insightful. And I'm listening to you thinking it wasn't too long ago that I realized, because I've thought about this a lot, because Heston would say, you know, I don't really, I don't really feel love. Like, there's not really an attachment here for me.
Yeah.
There's nothing that's really tethered, like I don't want to
Yeah.
leave, because there are people I love, and I think they love me, and I don't want to leave. Primarily people that I love. And what I realized along the way was one of the things I struggled with was that I had, because of past situations, I had come to associate love with abuse, uh, deceit,
Mm-hmm. Yes.
breaking of trust.
Comes with
And
consequences.
so
Yeah.
for a long time, while I loved my wife, I did not want her to, it's really paradoxical. Like, and sometimes I wondered, it's like, I wonder if that's what Heston was trying to tell me. It's like, I love, I love the people in my family, but I'd rather not have them do anything for me,
Yes.
because then I'll do
There you go.
everything. I'll do everything.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't want you doing anything for me. They would call me the alone man, because I did everything. I know I've got that. I'll do it myself. And one day I realized, it's like, why do you do? And like what, you know, I wouldn't want somebody to show me affection, because, and the weird part was that's what I craved.
Right.
That's my love language, is affection. Right.
Yep.
But I did not want it, because to me, accepting it meant, I know this is going to sound completely effed up, okay, but accepting it would mean at that moment it would turn into all the negative things that I had associated with it. So if I could stop that from happening, then at least I could love. But if I didn't accept it in return, then
Right.
I wouldn't have to see it end badly the way it had. Does that even make sense? Like,
Oh,
it's so completely screwed up in my head, you
see, and
know?
that's the thing. Like, I have poor relationship with money, but I also have a poor relationship with love, and it's the same thing. I can give it, but I don't know how to receive it. I can
Yeah.
give if it's Christmas and I've got the means, I'll give you all the gifts you want, but
Yeah.
please do not give me one.
Yeah. It's very
It's
uncomfortable. Like,
it's
I don't
very
just leave
it's
that off of me. Right. And
yeah,
I think just thinking through it over time, it was like, well, but why?
right,
Like, why? Like,
because I'm
they
not
are just
worthy.
trying to show you. There you go. Right. I mean, it's like, and I'm not worthy of it. And to reinforce why I'm not worthy of it, if I accept it, it will become abusive,
Yeah,
distrustful,
yeah,
like all those negative things
yes,
will come
yeah,
with. Like, it doesn't just love doesn't come without these other things. So
right,
I would appreciate it if you wouldn't love me. You know,
yeah,
if you could just allow me to love you, but if you could just stay at a distance, you know.
yeah.
And I wonder if some of that wasn't,
Oh, it's
Hester's
a
way of
lot of
thinking
it.
too.
And I don't really understand love, and I don't know that. And as I look back, I can tell you people love me. My grandfather loved me. My grandmother
Yeah.
loved me. My dad loved me. My sister loved me, even though she beat me up. She loved me. There's things there that we're just not able to hold on to. We don't get it in this. It we're afraid the rug will be pulled out. And then
Yes.
here's the other part
Yeah.
of the intelligence is the hypocrisy of humanity gets a hold of us. And I say humanity because it's across the board. Everything comes with a consequence. And we
Yes.
know that. And we
Yeah.
can't reconcile that within our mind of, if you say you love me, then why did this happen? I go through it every
Yes.
day.
Yeah.
And that's the struggle with somebody like me is like, but you just said this 2 days ago and you're telling me this in this way. That's different.
Yeah.
This doesn't, so I don't trust you now.
Yeah.
And it starts putting up these walls, and then we start ruining relationships, and then we sabotage, and then we prove the theory, and it's just a
See,
snowball.
I knew it was
Yeah.
going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
So
Yeah.
I have solid friends, and I check my thoughts against them because I know my perception is skewed because
Yeah.
of my upbringing. It's not fully skewed, but it's skewed enough to keep me off the path
Yeah.
sometimes, a lot of times.
Yeah. It's just such a complex, you know, the thing you want, you work so hard to avoid,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, but if you want it, why are you working so hard to avoid it? You're putting all your energy into avoiding it. And then it's like, well, yeah, because it comes with all these other things. You can't just have it by itself. And then
Yeah.
people are like, well, sure you can. And but part of it is there's always going to be something that is not perfect,
Right.
you know, but but yeah. And I think that it does. Yeah. I feel what you're saying, man.
Love is one of those Russian dolls. It just keeps
Yes.
opening. That was just
Yeah.
There's different layers to it, and some of them
Yeah.
are not great, and
Yeah.
some of
Yeah.
it's
It's
not
not.
enough.
Yeah.
And then this is what I've learned, or am learning right now, is that it's my perception and my ability to accept the invitation, and I don't accept the invitation very well
Yeah.
a lot of times,
Yeah.
and that's in the smallest ways. I discount some of the most beautiful people in my life and the closest ones and say I'm alone and I don't have anybody to talk to, and yet they're standing right there and
Right.
I'm saying it to them.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. 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 Like, you're literally saying it to the
You're
person who's
saying
like,
it to them.
what about me?
Yeah.
I'm right here. You're like,
Yeah.
yeah, no, I got nobody.
And that's where healthy people are like, well, you just don't see it. And that's,
Yeah.
and they can say, well, what about me? But they just keep standing there.
Right.
And they're like, yeah, you'll either realize it or, just burn the bridge.
Yeah.
And generally we tend to burn bridges. I mean, that's generally
Yeah.
we're carrying gas cans and lighters and cigars in our mouth. I mean, it's ready to go, but
Yeah.
Unintentionally and not maliciously, it's just because trust is a huge thing, and we can pick apart any part of an emotion and justify the negative behind the positive. It's a
Yeah.
horrible gift, I guess.
Yeah, it is.
But
Man, this has been
yeah,
amazing.
yeah,
It's been amazing. And it's, you know, I know it kind of sounds like it's reversed, but I just appreciate you sharing
yeah. Thanks,
and
man.
having this conversation, because it's actually helped me uh,
Good.
having the conversation, thinking back to my son, and
Yeah, good. Because it
it's
can go
been very
one way or
helpful.
the other, and that's
Yeah.
the hard thing. But in the end, nobody can do anything. You only do what you can do.
Yeah.
I've
And
had
sometimes that's just not enough,
sometimes, well, and it was enough, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, it was enough, and it just this is a tough planet for some of us.
Yeah.
It is,
Yeah.
and extremely hard for more of us. We feel the gravity
Yeah.
at an exponential
He was a
rate.
very
So
tender soul. He was a
yeah,
very tender soul.
isn't that
And it's a
amazing?
very brutal world.
Oh my gosh! Like just reading over your bio, I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. Like, because
But we did it.
you're right, we absorb it all, and keep moving forward, and try to be better. But um, tell me just quickly about your book, and then we'll close this out a little.
Yeah. Look, it's, uh, I ended up taking some time last summer. One of my physicians and some other folks said, you ought to write, you got all this story, you ought to put something down in paper. And I didn't really want to do something where I relived a lot of stuff. So I one day I pulled up, because I kept it on a document, these 15 things that I had collected
Mm-hmm.
along the way. And I said, well, maybe instead of telling, the details of every situation, I can just use the situations to maybe communicate to people how these core beliefs came into being, why I put them into this phrasing, or created these cliches that I could quickly kind of pull out of memory when I needed to. I didn't. It was kind of like a meta cliche. It would represent a lot of data, but I could just pull it up in a few words. And so I guess I started out just thinking I was going to put a few things into a Word document, just write something down, and then 2 weeks later there was an editor, and there was people doing like a cover design and stuff like that. And I'm not an author by trade. I'm
Right.
not really a writer. Um, so I just kind of looked at it as I would put these thoughts down. Half the book is about the core beliefs, and half the book is about other things like finding community, and
Hmm.
and getting involved in it. Things that like you can do in your everyday life to kind of walk you through. And I try to use in the book different examples, not just my examples, but other examples. What do you do if you get laid off? What do you do? Because these are triggers for other things, right?
Right.
Like when
Yep.
these bad circumstances show up, they might trigger or maybe that's the wrong phrase, the wrong word to use, but they might cause someone to spiral out
Yep.
of control. And so
Yep.
it's like, okay, well, what do you do in that? What are some things you might consider doing, right? You give yourself the chance to think there's alternatives. And so that's kind of what the book became. It's out on Amazon. It's not a very long read, 150 pages, something like that, 140 pages. But it's really just focused. The first half of the book is really focused around um, kind of describing what the core beliefs are, what kind of the intent behind each one of them. And then my hope is that when people read it, something in there will speak to them. One of those things will speak to them, and it will
Yeah.
help them continue forward. Right? It will
Mm-hmm.
it will give them a way to just basically do the 90 days that you did until you could get to a place that because I think that's part of it too, is we need in that place, we all need something that will just help us sustain ourselves until we get to what we need.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
but if you don't make it to that point where you can get to what you need, and it's kind of like one of my doctors told me one time, my primary physician told me one time, I was in chemo and I was getting really worn out, tired, exhausted, it's because it's fatigue
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
everything. And so he was going to give me this drug that I guess it's basically legal meth. And I guess originally they gave it to like Air Force pilots who were doing like 28-hour flights or whatever it was, so like, if you take this, you got enough energy to keep going through the treatments. And I went back to him a couple months later, and he said, "How's the fatigue?" I said, it's awful, man. It's gotten worse." And he goes, "Even on this medication, even on this, like, it's worse?" And I said, "Oh no, I never took the medication. I didn't take the medication." He said, "Why didn't you take the medication?" I said, "Well, I read about it, man, and it's highly addictive. It's like really super highly addictive." And he goes, "Andy, you're dying. I can fix addiction. I cannot fix death. So take the medication." And so I did, right? He's like, prioritize.
Right.
And so I think, like, what he was doing was telling me, I need to keep you alive until you get what you need.
Yeah.
Right. Like the goal was that medication wasn't going to solve anything. It was just going to keep me going until a solution showed up. And that's kind of what I hope that someone will take from the book, from these 15 core beliefs, is that, they're things that can maybe applied in your own way at your time will help sustain you for that, like in your case, that extra 3 months until you can get to a place, right?
Yeah.
That's the hope of it. So you can find it on Amazon.
Nice. I love that. Well, Andy, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you being here and sharing your story, sharing the hardships of your loss. It hits home in so many ways for me, and not just because I'm on both sides of it. I get to understand what that loss could be, and then I get to understand what the possibility of life is. And so it's a very close to me, and it hits me.
Well, I tell you, it's been an unexpectedly great blessing to be on with you. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I can't thank you enough. This has been an absolute pleasure.